Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo have just been spotted at an airport, and what happened between them in that public space, in the middle of one of the busiest and most heavily documented transit environments in the world, is so completely unexpected and so entirely unmanaged and so far beyond anything either of them has ever allowed to be visible in a public space of that nature that the people who were there and caught it on their phones could not believe what they were seeing, in the fandom that has since received the footage and the photographs and the first-hand accounts is currently in a state of collective emotional devastation that nobody has any intention of recovering from anytime soon. This was not arranged. This was not a scheduled public appearance designed to produce content. This was an airport, with crowds, with cameras everywhere, with a specific and relentless visibility of public transit at the highest traffic level. And they did not care. Before we get into every jaw-dropping detail, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications because MinKyo updates are coming fast and you absolutely cannot afford to miss a single moment. Now let's talk about what everyone is completely speechless over. Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo's unexpected airport display of affection, and why every single detail of what happened tells the most important story this relationship has produced in a very long time. Let us start with why an airport specifically matters as the location for this story, because the airport is not a neutral backdrop, and understanding what airports mean in the context of celebrity public displays of affection is essential for understanding the full weight of what Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo allowed to be visible in one. Airports are among the most intensely documented public spaces that exist in the landscape of Korean celebrity life. They occupy a specific and important place in the culture of K-entertainment fandom precisely because they are spaces where celebrities move through in transit, in the brief intervals between the managed professional contexts that structure most of their visible public existence, and where the combination of arrival or departure pressure and the focused attention of fans and photographers who specifically stake out these spaces produces a particular kind of high visibility, low control environment that reveals things about people that the more managed contexts do not. Korean celebrity airport fashion is a documented cultural phenomenon. Korean celebrity airport behavior is observed and analyzed and archived by fandoms across the industry. Every gesture, every expression, every interaction that occurs in an airport between a celebrity and any other person in their vicinity is potentially documented, potentially circulated, and potentially analyzed for everything it might reveal. Celebrities who have been in Korean entertainment for any significant length of time understand this at a fundamental level. They have learned to navigate airport spaces with a specific quality of professional composure that allows them to be warm and accessible to the fans who gather at these spaces while maintaining the personal and emotional boundaries that public transit requires of people who need to actually travel from one place to another without being overwhelmed by the visibility the space produces. Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo both know how airports work. They have individually navigated these spaces for their entire careers with the composed professionalism of people who understand the specific nature of the visibility and who have learned to move through it without allowing it to produce moments that they did not specifically choose to produce. Their individual airport presences have been documented extensively across their careers, and what that documentation shows is two people who are warm and gracious and professionally appropriate in these spaces without ever allowing the spaces to access the interior of their private lives in any form. Airports have seen their professional faces, their controlled warmth, their carefully maintained public personas moving through transit with the grace of long practice. What happened at this airport was different. This is not the professional face. This is not the controlled warmth or the carefully maintained public persona. This is something that the airport was not supposed to get, and that it got anyway because what happened between them in that space was too present and too immediate and too completely genuine to wait for a more appropriate context to express itself. They were spotted together first in the arrivals area. This detail matters because the arrivals area carries its own specific emotional charge that the other areas of an airport do not. An arrivals area is the space of reunions. It is the space where people who have been separated by distance and time come back into each other's physical presence after however long the separation lasted, and the quality of that return carries the emotional weight of the absence that preceded it in a form that is immediate and physical and entirely involuntary in its expression. Whatever the separation had been in this case, Whether it was the filming schedule that takes Lee Min-ho away from the household for extended periods or some other professional commitment that had placed distance between them for a duration sufficient to produce the quality of reunion that the arrivals area witnessed, the reunion was real and the reality of it was visible in every account of what happened. He saw her first. This is the detail that has been confirmed by every person who witnessed the moment, and that tells you everything about the dynamic of the reunion before anything else is described. He came through the arrivals exit in the way of someone who has been traveling and is moving through the transition from the contained space of transit into the public space of the arrival point, with a specific quality of attention that arriving in a busy public space requires of someone with his level of visibility. And then he saw her, standing in the arrivals area, waiting. Having chosen to be there, at the airport, in the most public and the least controllable environment available for the reunion, because she wanted to be the first thing he encountered when he came through the arrivals exit, rather than the thing he encountered at the end of the drive home after he had already navigated all the intermediate stages of the return. She came to the airport for him. This is the first layer of the display, and it is one that requires a moment of full appreciation before we move to the more obviously visible layers. Song Hye-kyo came to the airport. With everything that means in terms of the visibility it requires and the documentation it invites and the specific quality of public exposure that airport arrivals produce for two of the most recognized faces in Korean entertainment. She came because she wanted to be there when he arrived. Not because any external expectation or social convention required it. Because the wanting to be there was stronger than every available reason not to be there. And the wanting to be there was itself a public statement before a single photograph had been taken or a single gesture had been made. The moment when he saw her and she saw him has been described by witnesses with a consistent and specific vocabulary of people who recognized that they were watching something that exceeded the ordinary register of public celebrity interaction. He stopped. Not dramatically. The specific brief arrest of movement that happens when a person's walking brain is overtaken by the seeing brain, when what has just entered the visual field requires a full moment of reception before the body continues with whatever it was doing. He stopped and he looked at her, and what his face did in that moment of stopping and looking has been described by everyone who saw it with the word that always appears in descriptions of Lee Min-ho's face when Song Hye-kyo is its subject. Complete. His face completed itself at the sight of her in the arrivals area of the airport, and the completeness was visible from the distance of everyone who was watching. She was smiling. Ready. Before he reached her and before anything physical had occurred and before the public display that sent the fandom into its current state had been produced, she was smiling the smile that the fandom has learned to recognize as the one that belongs to the private hours of her life with him, and that appears in the public spaces only when the feeling behind it is too large for the public composure to manage. The smile was already there when he stopped and looked at her across the arrivals area, and the smile told him everything about the quality of her waiting and the quality of her feeling about his return before he had taken a single step toward her. He walked to her. In an airport. With cameras everywhere and fans present, and the full visibility of one of the most documented public transit spaces in the Korean entertainment geography. Lee Min-ho walked to Song Hye-kyo in the unhurried and entirely purposeful way that he has always walked to her whenever she is available to be walked to, and the context is one that his body registers as calling for the closing of whatever distance exists between them. The walking itself was the first visible element of the public display because the walking, in that space with that quality of purpose and that quality of unself-conscious directness, communicated everything about where his priority was and what the arrival had produced in him before anything else happened. And here is where the speechless begins. Because what happened when he reached her was not what the fandom expected from this couple in this type of public environment. It was not the composed and professionally warm greeting of two celebrities managing their visibility in a heavily documented public space. It was not the careful and boundaried acknowledgement of two people who have learned to be present to each other in public, without allowing the public presence to access anything that belongs to the private one. It was the hug. Real. Full. The specific quality of hug that belongs to reunions rather than greetings, that is produced not by social convention but by the body's response to the return of someone whose physical absence has been registered and whose physical presence is now being received with a full and involuntary expression of the relief and the happiness that the presence produces. He held her. In the airport. In the arrivals area. With every camera in the vicinity eventually pointed at them, and with the sound of the space going slightly different around them in the way that spaces go slightly different when the thing happening in the center of them is the kind of thing that makes people stop and look. He held her with the specific quality of someone holding a person they have missed in the real and physical sense of the word, whose body had registered the absence across the duration of the separation and is now registering the end of the absence with the full presence of everything the body knows about what she feels like, and what her presence means to the system that has been in her vicinity long enough to have calibrated itself to it. Let us now talk about why this is such a big deal for MinKyo specifically, and why an airport hug that would be unremarkable for many couples is the kind of moment that sends this specific fandom into the specific emotional state it is currently in. Because Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo have been extraordinarily protective of the physical dimension of their relationship in public spaces. Not in the cold or the distant way of people who are not physically comfortable with each other in public, but in the specific and considered way of two people who have decided together that what their physical relationship looks like belongs to the private space, and that the public space is not the appropriate venue for its visible expression. They have been consistent about this. The hand kiss at the global conference was the exception that the fandom has been returning to for evidence because it was the exception. The airport hug is a second exception, and it is an exception of a different order because it was not a formal public occasion with a defined context that created the conditions for the gesture. It was an airport, with no context except the context of a person returning and a person waiting and two people being reunited in the most ordinary and the most human sense of the word. The fact that they allowed this to be visible in this space is the statement. Not the hug itself, though the hug is beautiful and real and everything the fandom is responding to. The statement is the allowing. The decision, made in the moment or made in advance or made in the specific way of a decision that is not made consciously because the choosing has already been done at the level of who they are with each other, to not manage this. To not produce the composed and boundaried public version of the reunion. To simply be two people in an airport who have missed each other and who are holding each other because that is what two people who have missed each other do when they are finally in the same physical space again. The allowing is the declaration. More direct and more complete and more credible than any official statement or any managed public appearance could ever be. They are comfortable being seen like this. Not comfortable in the slightly anxious way of people who have made a public relations decision to show more and are monitoring the outcome. Comfortable in the specific and settled way of people for whom the public visibility of their reunion is simply a byproduct of being reunited in a public space, and who have arrived at such a complete peace with their love being real and known and visible that the management of its visibility has stopped feeling like something worth the effort. Now let us talk about what happened after the initial embrace, because the after is as significant as the during and has its own complete story to tell about where these two people are with each other. They moved through the airport together. Not with the slight professional distance that celebrities in shared public spaces typically maintain to prevent the space from becoming a photo opportunity rather than a transit point. Together. In the physical sense of people who have found their default configuration in each other's proximity, and who do not see any compelling reason to modify that configuration because they are in a public space. His hand found hers in the way that his hands always find hers when they are available, below the level of conscious decision, in the automatic and entirely habituated way of someone whose body has learned that her hand is where his hand goes in these circumstances and who has no available reason to override the habit. They were photographed holding hands in the airport. This photograph has been described by people who have seen it with a specific emotional response of people who have been given visual evidence of something they have always believed. The photograph shows not a posed couple holding hands for a camera, but two people in transit in a busy public space whose hands have found each other, and who are moving forward together in the specific and fluid way of people for whom this physical configuration is the default rather than the special occasion. The ease in the photograph is what makes it affecting rather than the romance. The ease of people who have been holding hands long enough in private that the holding hands in public requires no decision and produces no self-consciousness. Just the hands together and the movement forward and the airport crowd continuing around them in the way that crowds continue around people who are too absorbed in being together to be absorbed in the crowd. What this airport moment means in the full context of the MinKyo's story is something that the fandom has arrived at with the consistency of people who are thinking about the same thing from different angles and reaching the same destination. It means that they have arrived at a place in this love where the protection of it from public visibility has become less important than the living of it. Where the management of what the public sees has been deprioritized relative to the simple and complete priority of being present to each other in whatever space they happen to be occupying, including the airport arrivals area with its cameras and its crowds and its comprehensive documentation of everything that happens within it. They are not hiding anymore. Not because hiding was ever dishonest, because it was always the appropriate protection of something too important to be offered casually to public consumption. But because the love has arrived at a place of such established and settled completeness that it does not need the protection of invisibility to survive the visibility. It is strong enough to be seen. Has always been strong enough. They have simply arrived at the point where they know it. The fan reaction to the airport moment has been the most unified and the most personally resonant response that any single MinKyo development has produced in recent memory. And the quality of the unity is worth noting because it reflects something about what the moment means that goes beyond the usual dimensions of celebrity fandom response. People who have been following this story for years and people who encountered it for the first time through the airport footage have responded with the same quality of feeling. Not the excited and slightly frenzied feeling of fans receiving new content about their favorite pairing. The quieter and more sustaining feeling of people who have witnessed something real and who have been reminded by the witnessing why real things matter and what it means to encounter them in a world that often produces their simulation instead. The airport gave the world Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo in the most ordinary and the most human form available. Not the staged declaration or the official photograph or the managed release of something deliberate and curated. The ordinary form. The arrivals area form. He came through the exit and she was there and he walked to her and they held each other and then they walked out of the airport holding hands form. The form that belongs to every couple who has ever missed each other across the distance of a separation and been reunited in the specific and ordinary magic of an airport arrivals area. The form that is indistinguishable from the most everyday human love story because it is one. Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo in that airport were not celebrities having a public moment. They were people having a private one that happened to be in public because the public space was where the private moment had to occur. And the public space was privileged to contain it. This is not PR. There is no staff explanation. There is no brand schedule or promotional reason or image management calculation that produces a full and held embrace in an airport arrivals area. There is no strategic reason to hold hands through the terminal in the specific and habituated way of people whose hands belong together. What is left when all of those explanations have been eliminated is the only remaining explanation. They missed each other. They were reunited. They held each other because that is what you do when the person you love comes back. And then they walked out together because there is no other direction either of them wants to walk. MinKyo is still here. They are still choosing each other. They are still prioritizing each other. They are still deeply connected in the specific and daily and entirely ordinary way of people who have built a real life together, and who have arrived at such a complete and settled happiness in that life that the airport sees what the private household has always seen. The same love. In every space. Consistent and present and entirely genuine across every context it is required to exist in, including the arrivals area at an international airport with cameras everywhere and the whole watching fandom on the other side of every lens.